Well, and then by process of elimination, I believe I know what the final episode of season 5 of Dark Side of the Ring will be, but it will be the Black Saturday episode, is it not?
That's right. Yep. Mhm.
And of course, now I've got to give people the caveat for those who are might tune in and think, "Oh my God, they're going to talk about all the stuff about Vince." Well, this was a scandal Vince was involved in 40 years ago, and
Mhm.
much of the episode was finished by the time we found out his predilection for poop play and other types of debauchery. So that's gonna have to wait till season 6 probably. But season 5, everybody's going to get a good whiff of Vince McMahon's business practices and morals along with this episode, are they not?
Yeah, yeah, this was filmed. We did this interview with you, I think it was last year, so it was before a lot of the, the allegations and controversy and stuff. So, um, yeah, this is, one of Vince's first chess moves to take over the professional wrestling industry on a national scale. The hostile sort of, if you will, takeover of Georgia Championship Wrestling, and it was always something that we wanted to tell, uh, or taking over the time slot, I should say. It was always a story that we wanted to tell, but it was a factor of trying to get enough people who are still around to
Yeah.
tell the story and are able to tell, the story. Of course, we got to mention. I'm sure you guys talked about it on the program, but R.I.P. to Ole Anderson, who is a huge part of the story. Obviously, he wasn't in a medical. He wasn't, at the time we were doing the episode, he wasn't in a spot where he was able to appear on camera to tell his own story. But I have to say, his son Bryant did an amazing job in this episode,
Excellent.
kind of being his surrogate, if you will, and he's very studied up on this subject. And you'll see, he acts as a perfect proxy for his father.
Well, and obviously with Ole passing, last week or week before last, as they hear this now, we've been talking about it, in various ways. But the Black Saturday episode was the first time, and it's also newsworthy because MLW just didn't win. They got a settlement in their antitrust suit against the WWE. This was 40 years ago, almost to the month that this happened. And
Right.
Vince did have a monopoly on pro wrestling on cable television in the United States. He had USA Network, he had TBS, and he had his WGN, I think, at the time also. So any superstation, any cable network in those early days that had wrestling, it was Vince's. And if he'd been able to sustain that, then there might not have been a war in the 80s or the 90s. But thankfully, the fans rebelled against seeing WWF style wrestling on TBS, and the NWA was able to get back involved because Turner got involved in it. And
Right.
obviously, you're going to tell this on the episode, but
Hmm.
but it was the first time that Vince tried and almost succeeded to take over the whole thing,
Hmm.
and it was almost a rout.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of interesting voices on this episode. As I mentioned, Jerry Briscoe earlier, and there's a wild story involving, it's complicated to sort of summarize here, but ostensibly it led to, Ole Anderson and the Briscoes taking a blood oath in a hotel room to not essentially double cross each other during this whole incident. And that's crazy. And so this is a big story for Jerry Briscoe too, because he, ultimately did side with Vince on this and sold his shares. And it led to a lot of ill will amongst a lot of the promoters in the territories at the time. And he got a lot of death threats. And, so this is a very important story for him.
Well,
Uh,
and then also, and as much as I was rooting for Vince not to be on TBS at the time, as much as I love Jerry Briscoe,
yeah.
he was put, and Jack was put in a bad position because another central character in this episode is Jim Barnett.
Yep.
And without Barnett involved in the Georgia promotion, the Briscoes realized that their shares, which were worth tens of thousands of dollars per point or whatever at that time could be in the next short little while worthless, and they were going to lose their ass on that if they didn't
and they
take the offer.
And they weren't getting paid any dividends. Like they weren't getting money from the company at the time. So they were, equally also like kind of, either way, exactly. It would be worth nothing. Tommy Rich is in the episode. I can't remember his real name, but the referee Nick Patrick, we remember, of course.
Well, Jody Hamilton's son.
Jody Hamilton Jr., right? Is that?
Well, goddamn,
James Hamilton.
I first met him 40 years ago. I've never called him anything but Nick.
Me too. That's how I knew him, and of course, from TV. So he's in the episode, and then we have two folks who worked in the offices of Georgia Championship Wrestling that are very interesting to get their takes on it. One, Bobby Simmons, and the other was her name was Louise Cochran, and she worked. I think she was either. I think she was a secretary to Ole or something. And
Louise was the secretary / glue / office manager / anything that needs to be done in a timely fashion or without errors or spelling mistakes. Get Louise to do it.
There you go. So she's in the episode. So hearing from her is pretty compelling. Bob Roop is in the episode as well. So it's, trying to get basically everybody we can, and of course yourself, but trying to get everybody we can in the episode.
Oh, yeah. Susie said, trying to get everybody we can. We have no standards. We'll take anybody. You're in it. Thank you for that full-throated endorsement.
No.
But if people want to get a course now that Vince is in the news again perpetually for all of his own doing, if they want to get a course in how he initially fired the first shot and trying to assassinate all the other territories, the Black Saturday episode will wind up season 5 with a good primer in that.
Yeah, and one more thing, just as a teaser for the episode for people to tune in. It was pretty amazing when we did talk to Ole's son Bryant. He had unearthed this letter that's very historically significant, and it's from 1987. And it's a letter that Bill Watts wrote to Ole Anderson, after all this, and it's this amazing basic, decree saying, Ole, you were right about everything, about Vince, and you were right about Vince. What you saw it before anybody else did about what Vince was going to do to this business, and that was a major vindication for Ole. And I think that little letter, which you'll see in the episode, is especially noteworthy in the context of the history of this whole thing.
I can't wait to see that. And as well, do we get to the bottom of Ole saying, well, fuck you and fuck Linda?
I can say we definitely get to the bottom of it. Yeah. I mean, it's in there. It's definitely in there.
That's the one thing. Ole was great at a lot of things, but probably the best thing was carrying a grudge.